Ivy and Bean Break the Fossil Record. Written by Annie Barrows. Illustrated by Sophie Blackall. On your mark, get set. Yikes! The first 40 straws were easy peasy. Bean stuck them all in her mouth at once. Then she opened another box of straws. She said to Ivy, pointing. More? Are you sure? Asked Ivy. Bean nodded. Here, she grunted, which meant 257. Ivy pulled a straw out of the box and shoved it into Bean's mouth. But she accidentally shoved it too hard, and the straw scraped the back of Bean's throat. Hack! Choked Bean, and the straws sprayed across the kitchen floor. Ivy winced. Sorry. Ow! Bean's eyes were watering. She looked at the straws all over the kitchen and thought about Mary Anning. She wasn't a quitter, and neither was Bean. She began to pick up the straws. Ivy helped. Once again, she shoved 40 straws in her mouth, and, very carefully, Ivy pushed in one more. 41, 42, 43. The girls were working so hard that they didn't hear Bean's dad come into the kitchen. 44. Hi, Ivy. Hi. Bean, what have you got in your mouth? Bean's dad said, staring. Oh, said Bean. Straws, said Ivy helpfully. She's breaking a world record. Excellent, Bean's dad said, leaning over to see better. How many does she need to get in there? 257, said Ivy. She looked at Bean. Bean nodded. How many does she have in now? 44. Her father didn't say anything, but Bean knew what he was thinking. It was no good. She was never going to get 257 straws in her mouth. Sadly, she pulled the straws out. I'll never break a world record. She handed the spitty straws to her father. Thanks a lot, said Dad. Maybe there's a different record you could break. Like what? Asked Bean. I can't walk on my hands. Bean's dad glanced at the sink. He hadn't washed the breakfast dishes yet. Why don't you set the record for fast dishwashing? He said, smiling. That would be a good one. Bean ran to get the book. There were no records for fastest dishwasher. This is going to be a piece of cake, said Bean, looking at the counter piled with plates. You could do it slowly and still break the record, said Ivy. It'll be better to do it fast, said Bean. Super fast, then no one will ever break my record. Her father began to look a little worried. Maybe this isn't a very good idea. Dad, every day you and Mom tell me I have to wash the dishes, said Bean. And now, when I finally want to, you say it's not a good idea. She shook her head. Grown-ups were so weird. Well, said her dad. Okay, but be careful. What was he talking about? She was always careful. Bean began running nice warm water in the sink. She squirted out a big jet of soap, and mountains of bubbles grew. Keep your eyes peeled, she said to Ivy. You'll probably only see a blur. Bean's father ran his hands through his hair. Couldn't you grow the longest fingernails instead? He asked. Takes too long. You're the official timekeeper, Ivy, said Bean as the water gushed. And Dad, you have to take a picture of me when I'm done, with all the shiny, clean plates. Sure, said her dad. I'm going to do all these plates in 5 minutes, said Bean. Got that? 5 minutes. Okay, said Ivy, looking at the clock. On your mark, get set, go. Bean grabbed a plate and plunged it into the water. Wipe, wipe, wipe. She rinsed it in the next door sink. Rinse, rinse, rinse. She put it in the dish rack. Okay, next plate. Wipe, wipe, wipe. Rinse, rinse, rinse. Dish rack. How am I going? 1 minute gone, said Ivy. Wow, Bean looked at the pile of plates. She would have to hurry. Quickly, she put 2 plates in the soap and wiped them. Quickly, she rinsed them. Rack again. Wipe, rinse, rack again. Wipe, rinse, rack again. Wipe, rinse, rack again. How many more minutes? Yelled Bean as she scrubbed. You've got half a minute left, said Ivy. Oh no. Frantically, Bean took 2 more plates and plunged them in the soap. Zip, she wiped them. Zip, she put them in the clean water. Dish rack. Only 10 more seconds, called Ivy. There was only 1 more plate left. Bean whizzed it into the soap and shook it. Hurry! She whizzed it into the clean water. Hurry! 1 more second! Bean panicked. Yeah, she screeched, hurling the plate at the dish rack. It flew over the rack and crashed to the floor, shattering into a million pieces. There was a stunned silence. Ivy, Bean, and Bean's dad stared at the little bits of plate sprinkled over the floor. Finally, Bean spoke. Did I do it in 5 minutes? Ivy shook her head. No. Dang. What a scream. When Bean's older sister Nancy wanted her room painted yellow, Bean's mother said that Bean could pick out a new color for her room too. Bean picked green. Not light, sweet green. Deep, rich green, the color of emeralds. Everyone told her she would get tired of it, but she hadn't. Bean loved her room. It was small and cozy. Her bed was in one corner, her toy box in another, her dresser in a third, and, best of all, her basket chair was in the fourth. She liked to sit in her chair and pretend that she was an ape girl living in a jungle tree house. She had made a lot of pictures of jungle animals and stuck them on the wall. The best was the toucan. We could draw, said Ivy, looking at the pictures. We could draw dinosaurs. I don't want to draw. I want to break a world record, said Bean. Don't you? Ivy shrugged. Not really. Seems like a lot of work for nothing. I don't want spoons all over my face. But then you'd be famous, said Bean. But I don't care if I'm famous for spoons on my face. If I'm going to be famous, I want to be famous for something important, like Mary Anning. Bean shook her head. Spoons would be fine with her. But spoons were taken. Bean stared at her green wall and tried to get an idea. Ivy lay down on Bean's bed and tried to imagine finding an ichthyosaur. Quiet minutes went by. Hey, said Bean. Ivy looked at her. I've got a great idea, said Bean. This was going to be easy. I'm good at screaming, and I'm good at breaking things, right? I guess so. I'll break a glass by screaming, said Bean. I'll be the youngest person ever to do it. What? You scream and throw a glass? Ivy looked confused. You already did that with a plate. No, the scream breaks the glass. This lady in the book did it. She screamed so loud that a wine glass shattered. But she was old. I could probably scream louder because I'm young. I'll be a record breaker. That's a good record, said Ivy. That'll be fun. She bounced a little on Bean's bed. Okay, said Bean. I'll need a wine glass. I'll go get it. She jumped up. And then she sat down again. Her dad was still sweeping up little pieces of plate. He probably wouldn't be very happy to find out that she was planning to break something else. Maybe she could find something made of glass upstairs where he wouldn't need to know about it. Not a mirror, that was bad luck. But there had to be something she could use. I've got it, she yelled. Got what? Nancy's glass animals. I'll shatter one of them. It'll be even better than a wine glass. Won't Nancy get mad? Bean pictured Nancy's face and then quickly put it out of her mind. No, she has gazillions of them. And besides, I'll glue the animal back together when I'm done. She won't even notice. I hope, she added silently. Ivy went on a spying mission down the hall, past Nancy's room. The coast is clear, she reported when she came back. She's not in her room. Okie dokie, said Bean. She took a deep breath and headed for the door on super quiet tiptoe. Nancy's room was very organized. All her books were neatly arranged by color. Her yarn for knitting was rolled into tight balls. Her friendship bracelets were lying side by side on her dresser. And her glass animals were lined up in 2 long, straight rows across the top of her bookshelf. It was like a glass animal army. Nancy had been collecting them since she was 5. She had plain china cats and dogs and turtles, the kind that you can get at the drugstore. But she also had some fancy animals too, tiny dolphins and horses and butterflies. She had a beautiful unicorn with a blue glass horn and a peacock made of glass that shimmered like rainbows. Bean wasn't going to hurt him. But right in the middle of the army was a gloopy-looking octopus with 8 squiggly legs. That was the one, Bean decided. Its legs were thin. They would probably pop right off if she gave a good scream. And they'd be easy to glue back on. Nancy would never have to know. Bean grabbed the octopus and stuffed it down her shirt just to be safe. She tiptoed back to her room. Got it, she said, setting the octopus on her dresser. She took a few short breaths to get in the mood and looked hard at the little octopus. Its gloopy head dangled on one side. Prepare to die, she told it, and opened her mouth. Then she paused and looked at Ivy. You might want to cover your ears. Okay. Ivy stuck her fingers in her ears. Bean screamed as loud and high and shattering as she could. The octopus just sat there. It didn't even crack. So Bean screamed again, louder than she had ever screamed before. But even through her scream, Bean could hear another sound. It was the sound of her father running up the stairs very, very fast. A second later, he burst through the door. What's the matter? He shouted. His face was whitish gray. Bean stopped screaming. Nothing, she said. What's the matter with you?